All right, ladies and gentlemen, part one, chapter 5, 1.2. Okay, these notes are for 1.2, chapter 5. Okay, taxation without representation was another reason why the colonists decided to break from Britain. They did not have any representation. We're going to get into some of the taxes that were placed on them. Okay, so our target here is to learn about the financial and political impacts of the Sugar Act and Currency Act. Okay, when you see act, you see tax. That's what that is. All right. We want to know why and how, or excuse me, we want to know some of the effects of the financial rewards that Britain got from taxing the colonies, and then the political impacts, which will describe the colonists' reactions to these acts of parliament. So we're looking at the acts of parliament. They were the sugar acts or tax and the currency act. And we want to identify some of the grievances, and you will put them into a one sided flow map to show the acts of Congress. And you're going to show me the financial effects and also the political effects. All right. So we should see two descriptions here. All right. Now, you'll notice that I made some room. I noticed that some of you all typed the descriptions here, which is fine. But in the future, if you ever need more room and this canvas space here is not big enough, you can, click on these lines here and stretch them out. If you notice, I've done that already, and I can just click on these lines and drag them to where I want them to go. Any text that is here will automatically format. Okay, but when I hover my I-beam over these lines, it changes, so it allows me to click and drag. Okay, and I can move this to give myself more space. I also move this line here, and I move this text box over so I could have more room for my three descriptions: political, financial, and colonialist response. Colonist response, sorry. Let's take a look at these notes. You have control number 1, control number 2, and control number 3. Okay, these were the ways that the British Crown under King George decided to control the colonists and to raise money to pay for the French and Indian War. Let's take a look at the first one. Now, according to this first paragraph, you see the Sugar Act. In red is a description of the Sugar Act. Basically, what the king wanted, one way the king was going to raise money was to impose this tax on buying molasses. Okay. He said only buy it from West Indies because the British had control of most of, if not all of the West Indies, maybe parts, but the parts that produce molasses or produce the plant for molasses. He told the colonists to only trade and buy from them. I will lower your tax if you buy it specifically from the West Indies. Well, some colonists obeyed, some colonists did not. They smuggled it in. And they questioned why, because they had just gotten out of the Enlightenment and the Awakening. So they pushed back on authority. They smuggled their own molasses in so they could avoid these taxes. All right. And of course, they thought it was unfair. The next one was the Currency Act. Okay. And currency was another way of raising, Currency Act was another way of generating generating revenue and control. So no more colonies could use their own paper money. All right. They had to use the British pound. Okay. You all drew a picture of it in the escape room. They had to use the British pound. So when you're increasing one type of money over the other is losing its value. And I know it's not stated in the reading, but it is implied. And so if King George's British pound is increasing in value, then he's making money off of that. And he can control the type, and that allows him to control more of the colonial economy when he can do that. The colonists again asked why. They questioned it. Okay, their colonial money was dropping in value. They thought it was unfair. Finally, over here is the Navigation Act. Okay, and so I circled it in the third. All right. And again, in red, it's a quick description of the effect on the colonists. Right. The the Navigation Act controlled trade and shipping. Okay, it told the colonists where they could and could not trade. When the crown or the, King George and Britain are controlling trade, they're making some money off of that, either through taxes or through increased production. You just have to use some inferences there to kind of guess and to see how that would have increased trade. Again, this is not a full list, but the colonists were clearly asking why. They were losing money from other trade partners. They thought it was unfair and they thought it was unjust. They were frustrated and resented all of this control when the king is way on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. They have no representation, no one speaking on their behalf, in Britain. This is called tyranny, unjust treatment from government. So there you have it. You have those three. You can always go back and take a look. All right. So, how did the acts of Parliament affect the colonists? Okay, you can talk about the grievances they had. You can talk about the descriptions in red and put those here in 2 to 3 sentences. It doesn't have to be very long. Just a quick summary of how paying it, focusing on the colonists, the impact on colonists. They were losing money. They were frustrated, and they started to commit illegal acts, especially with the smuggling and stuff like that. So I just want to go back up here. Remember, your thinking map is going the situation, the acts of Parliament, the effects politically. How did the colonists react? Okay, when it comes to government and when it comes to King George, and just their overall reactions to the act, and then the financial. Okay, who benefited the most from these acts, and what were they supposed to do? Okay, really, all three of them benefited Britain, so they could pay for the war. Fair or unfair, that's how it went down. Okay, so if you have any questions on this, send me messages in Schoology.